still hold secrets darker than we can imagine. For centuries, the great dwarven kingdom of Moria has lain in ruin, its once vibrant halls now nothing more than tombs, haunted by the echoes of its fall. But what if the darkness that consumed it was not just the work of the Balrog, or the madness of its rulers? What if the real evil, the one that never truly died, still waits beneath the weight of stone and time? In the shadowed depths of Middle-earth, there are places where light cannot reach, where the land itself seems to be a living thing, quiet, waiting, hungry. Moria is such a place. Its labyrinthine halls, thought to be empty of life, pulse with a malevolent presence, a presence that no one in Middle-earth fully understands. And yet, even those as wise as Gandalf, the wielder of deep knowledge, could have missed what lies there, a truth far darker than anyone ever dared to imagine. Could it be that Moria, the once great city, is not truly empty, that something evil still stirs in its tomb-like depths? The question haunts the minds of those who dare to ask it, for it carries the weight of forgotten history, of untold stories buried beneath mountains of stone. And as the wise turn their gaze toward the unknown, there is a feeling that even they may be unprepared for the truths they are about to uncover. This is not a simple mystery. It is a riddle buried in shadow, one that, if solved, could unravel the very fabric of Middle-earth itself. Deep within the bowels of Moria, something ancient and powerful stirs. The balance that has held for millennia may soon be broken. The stakes, nothing less than the survival of those who live under the light of the sun. What was thought to be a forgotten ruin may yet rise again, bringing with it a darkness more potent than even the wisest of the wise could foresee. Gandalf sat alone in the quiet of Rivendell, his fingers brushing the edge of the ancient scrolls before him. He had seen much in his long life, more than most could imagine, and yet there were still mysteries that called to him, secrets buried deep in the heart of Middle-earth. One such mystery had begun to gnaw at him like a persistent shadow, and it was not one he could easily ignore. It was the mystery of Moria, and more specifically, what lay hidden within its ruins. Moria, the mines of Moria, a once great city of dwarves, had been lost to time. Over the years, its stories became little more than legend tales of riches, lost kings, and the terrible Balrog that had slain Durin's folk. The dwarves had perished in the darkness, and the city had fallen silent. But Gandalf, ever the seeker of forgotten lore, felt something else, something that pulled him towards Moria's forgotten halls. It wasn't just the Balrog that haunted his thoughts, nor was it merely the tale of the dwarves' greed and ruin. It was the feeling that something far more ancient, far more terrible, lay buried within the stone. As he scanned the ancient texts, a single phrase caught his eye, a phrase whispered among the Eldar, but never fully explored. The lost power of Moria. Gandalf's heart quickened. What did that mean? Had there been something more to Moria's fall than a simple tragedy? Was there a force that even the elves feared to mention? The whispers of Utumno echoed in his mind. The first dark stronghold of Morgoth, where the Dark Lord had once made his home. It had been destroyed long ago, or so it was thought. But as Gandalf dug deeper into the lore, he uncovered the possibility that some remnants of that ancient evil still lingered, scattered in forgotten corners of the world. Moria, once a hub of dwarven might, was connected to Utumno in ways that no one had fully understood. But what if Moria had been built upon the very bones of that dark power? What if, like Utumno, Moria had not been entirely destroyed? Gandalf's mind raced as he considered the implications. He could not ignore the feeling that the knowledge he had uncovered, though fragmented, held great weight. There was something hidden beneath Moria's black stone, something powerful and malevolent that might yet awaken if disturbed. But where did the Palantír fit into this? The ancient seeing stones, scattered across the lands of Middle-earth, were more than mere artifacts. They were links to the lost powers of old, their true nature obscured by the passing of time. Could one of these stones have been linked to Moria's dark past? With every passing moment, Gandalf felt the weight of the mystery grow heavier. It was a riddle that gnawed at him, one that he could not ignore, for the price of ignorance could be catastrophic. The Palantír had been used by the wise and the powerful, but what if it had also been used to hide truths that no one was meant to know? And now, the time had come to uncover them. As Gandalf gathered his thoughts and prepared for the journey ahead, he knew that what awaited him in Moria was no ordinary adventure. The history of the dwarves, the power of the Palantír, and the shadow of Morgoth all converged in the heart of the mountain. And it was there that Gandalf would face the greatest challenge of his life. The tales of Moria were not just stories of a city lost to time. They were the stories of forgotten evils, waiting patiently in the dark for the moment when the world was ready to hear their names again. Gandalf's heart was heavy as he prepared to leave Rivendell, for he knew that the path ahead would lead him deep into the belly of darkness. And yet, the answers he sought were buried in the very depths of that darkness. For some secrets, it seemed, were not meant to remain buried, and the price of revealing them could be higher than even the wisest could bear. Gandalf's heart stirred with a deep unease as he pored over the ancient scrolls laid before him. The more he read, the more the threads of the past began to intertwine with a truth he had been too reluctant to acknowledge. Moria, the mines of Moria, once a proud city of dwarves, was far more than a mere ruin. Its destruction had been swift and brutal, yes, but the shadows in its depths whispered of something far darker, something that had not been fully extinguished by the calamity of old. He had always believed the Balrog to be the final defining evil of Moria, and yet there was a gnawing sensation in the back of his mind that told him otherwise. was not the truth he had sought. Moria's fall, its descent into darkness, had been more than the end of a city. It had been the last embers of an ancient fire. And though the dwarves had perished, something had survived. Visions of the past flickered in his mind as he sat motionless, his gaze locked on the runes of ancient texts. The old dwarves spoke of a time before the Balrog, when Moria had been a place of wonder, a city forged in the fires of creation. Yet these very fires had turned into something more sinister, something twisted by Morgoth's dark influence. Gandalf felt it, this ancient evil, hiding in the cracks of history, ready to stir once more. Late into the night, as the winds howled outside, the wizard's mind drifted into a trance. He was no longer in Rivendell, but walking the darkened halls of Moria itself. He saw the dwarves at their peak, their faces alight with joy and pride. Yet that joy turned to horror as the earth trembled beneath their feet. Gandalf could hear the distant roars of the Balrog, but there was something else, something darker, a presence that seemed to seep from the very stones of Moria. It was as if the city itself had been alive, but now it was dying, suffocating under the weight of something far worse than the Balrog. His thoughts snapped back to the present. A familiar weight hung in the air. The signs were clear. The Balrog was not the only evil to have taken root in Moria. There had been something deeper, something far more malignant. Gandalf had to know what it was. He reached for the Palantír, the ancient seeing stone that had once belonged to the kings of Gondor. The stone's dark surface gleamed faintly in the candlelight as Gandalf whispered a command. The stone flickered to life, its depths swirling with light and shadow. The visions were not of the future this time, but of the past. And in those swirling depths, he saw Moria as it once was, the great halls, the echoes of laughter, the clink of metal and stone, and then the darkness. The stone trembled in his hand, as though recoiling from the horrors it revealed. He saw the dwarves, driven mad by something unseen, clawing at their own minds. He saw the shadow of Morgoth himself, reaching through the ages, leaving his mark on the dwarves who built in the shadow of his darkness. Gandalf knew that Moria's fall had been no mere accident. There had been something hidden within those stone walls, a power that should never have been disturbed. The time for speculation had passed. The truth had to be uncovered. Gandalf gathered his thoughts and, reluctantly, his plans. This was no longer a question of history. It was a matter of survival. He needed to go to Moria, but he could not go alone. The evening was drawing in as Gandalf approached the council at Rivendell. The gathered counselors, familiar faces from years past, looked up as he entered. Elrond's gaze was steady, his brow furrowed as he saw the urgency in Gandalf's expression. "What news, Gandalf?" Elrond asked. Gandalf's voice was low, tinged with a shadow of doubt. "I have seen the truth of Moria. The city's fall was not as complete as we believed. There is more beneath the stone, something ancient and dark, something that even the Balrog could not fully suppress. The room fell silent, the weight of Gandalf's words settling over them. Aragorn, sitting in the corner, was the first to speak. "What do you intend to do?" Gandalf turned his gaze to Aragorn, his old companion. "I must return to Moria, and I must bring others with me. We will seek what lies hidden beneath the stone, and if we are fortunate, we will understand the true nature of the evil that still festers there." Frodo, who had been quiet until now, looked up, his eyes wide with concern. "Is it safe?" "No," Gandalf answered, his voice soft but firm. "But it must be done." The council nodded, each understanding the gravity of the situation. Elrond, though concerned, placed his trust in Gandalf's wisdom. "Then we will prepare. Who will join you?" "I will need Aragorn, and I will need Frodo," Gandalf said. "There are others I will call upon, but the journey will be dangerous, and we must be prepared for whatever lies ahead." The next day, the group set out towards Moria. The journey was long, the terrain harsh and unforgiving, but the stakes were clear. Gandalf's mind raced as they neared the dark entrance to the mines. The further they walked, the more the air grew thick with tension. There was something about the place that felt alive, as if the very stones were watching them, waiting. As they approached the gates, Aragorn spoke in a low voice, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. "Do you feel that? It's as if the very air is charged with something." Frodo, standing beside Gandalf, shuddered. "I've never felt anything like this before." Gandalf nodded, his gaze locked on the darkened path ahead. "The power here is not gone. It waits." The gates of Moria loomed before them, dark and foreboding. The first steps into the mines were met with silence, a silence so deep it was, as though the world itself held its breath. They ventured deeper, the sound of their footsteps echoing off the stone walls. But as they passed through the ancient halls, Gandalf's unease grew. He could feel it, a presence just beyond his reach, a lingering malevolence that had not been fully extinguished. The deeper they went, the more the air seemed to shift, as if something ancient was waking. They came upon the first sign of it, an inscription on the wall, worn with age, but still legible. It spoke of a curse, a warning left by the dwarves before they sealed the city, a final plea for those who would come after. Gandalf paused before the inscription, his brow furrowed. This curse, it's not just a warning. It's a seal. A cold wind swept through the hall, and the sound of distant footsteps echoed in the far reaches of the cavern. It was then that Gandalf realized they had entered a place far beyond the reach of the living. The presence of Morgoth was not merely a distant memory. It was a force still lingering, waiting to be unleashed. "Something stirs," Gandalf whispered, his voice a mixture of fear and awe. "We must move quickly." As the group pressed on, the tension mounted. Each step they took seemed to stir the darkness, and with every corner turned, the sense of malevolent power grew stronger. There was no turning back now. Whatever lay ahead, they would face it together. But deep down, Gandalf knew this journey would reveal more than just the secrets of Moria. It would uncover the true cost of meddling with forces beyond comprehension. And in that dark place, the past and future would collide in ways none of them could have imagined. The deeper they went, the more they realized they had already awakened what had been sleeping for so long. Gandalf's breath caught in his chest as his fingers brushed against the cold surface of the Palantír. The artifact, once a symbol of hope and foresight, now seemed to hum with a dark energy, its depths swirling with shadows that were not of this world. He had seen many things through this stone, visions of distant lands, of battles and triumphs, but never had he felt such a palpable sense of dread emanating from it. The air around him grew colder, and his companions, Aragorn, Frodo, and the others, shifted uneasily. The stone had always been a tool of wisdom, a means of seeing and understanding the world. But as Gandalf peered deeper, something far more sinister began to unfurl before him. He saw Morgoth, the first Dark Lord, his shadow stretching across the ages, his influence lingering long after his fall. Gandalf's heart quickened as he realized the truth. The Palantír was not just a tool for seeing, it was a conduit, a gateway to Morgoth's long-lost power. It was a relic, locked away for millennia, waiting for the moment when the world would once again be ripe for corruption. The wizard's voice faltered as he addressed the group, his tone heavier than ever before. This stone, it was never meant to be a tool of wisdom. It was meant to guide Morgoth's will across the ages, a vessel for his power, his corruption. The group stared at the Palantír, horror etched on their faces. Aragorn stepped forward, his brow furrowed. Are you saying this stone, this artifact, is still connected to Morgoth? Gandalf nodded grimly. Yes, his influence was never fully destroyed. It has lingered in the deep places of the world, hidden away in the relics he left behind. And this stone is the key to it all. A silence fell over the group as the weight of Gandalf's words settled into their minds. The stakes had never been higher. The ancient evil that had once nearly consumed Middle-earth was not gone. It had only been buried, waiting for the right moment to return. And now they had stumbled upon it. The air grew colder still as Gandalf's gaze remained fixed on the Palantír. He saw visions, dark visions, of what lay ahead. Moria, the mines of Moria, once thought to be destroyed, now teeming with a malevolent force that had been reawakened by their very presence. The stone trembled in his hands as if it too recognized the truth, that the power of Morgoth was not only dormant, but active, ready to reclaim its place in Middle-earth. This is far worse than we thought, Gandalf murmured, his voice low. The Palantír was never meant to be used by mortals. It is an instrument of Morgoth's will, and through it, his darkness can spread once again. Frodo shuddered, his hand instinctively reaching for the one ring that hung hidden beneath his shirt. What do we do now? How do we stop this? Gandalf stood silently, his mind racing with the implications of what they had discovered. The Palantir's true nature was a revelation that shook him to his core. They had not merely uncovered a lost artifact. They had unearthed a conduit to an ancient evil, a power that had shaped the very fabric of Middle-earth's darkest history. We must destroy the Palantir, Gandalf said, his voice resolute. It cannot remain in the world. We must find a way to seal it away, as it was meant to be. If Morgoth's power is allowed to rise again, it will mean the end of everything we know. But even as Gandalf spoke, he knew that the true danger was not just in the Palantir. It was in the fact that Morgoth's influence had never fully faded from the world. The darkness was alive, waiting for the right moment to return, and now it was stirring once again. As the group ventured deeper into Moria, they began to experience the sinister remnants of Morgoth's lingering power. The once sturdy stone walls seemed to shift and groan with a life of their own, as if the very foundation of the mines was haunted by an ancient force. The air was thick with whispers, and shadows danced just out of the corner of their eyes. Each step they took seemed to pull them further into the darkness, drawing them closer to the source of the evil that had been buried for so long. Frodo could feel it too, the weight of the dark presence that surrounded them. It was as if Moria itself had become a tomb for the malevolent force that still lurked within its depths. But they could not turn back. They had come too far. The group pressed on, but the tension grew with every passing moment. The evil they had uncovered was not just a memory, it was a living force, one that had been dormant for ages, but was now awakening. And with it, the possibility of Morgoth's return loomed large over them all. By the time they reached the heart of Moria, the group was on edge. The cavernous halls stretched endlessly before them, and the weight of history, of evil long buried, pressed down upon them. Gandalf could feel it in the very air, the pulse of darkness that had not been fully vanquished. As they neared the chamber where the ancient evil had been sealed, a grim realization settled over Gandalf. The power of Morgoth was not merely a shadow of the past. It was a force that could rise again, more terrible than ever before. And they had unwittingly disturbed it. The realization hit them all at once. The evil they had uncovered could very well signal the resurgence of Morgoth himself. The implications were staggering. The stakes had never been higher. The balance of Middle-earth hung in the balance, and Gandalf knew that the consequences of their actions could be catastrophic. We must act quickly, Gandalf said, his voice urgent. We cannot allow this evil to spread further. But even as he spoke, he knew that the power they faced was far beyond their comprehension. The darkness they had unleashed was not something they could easily defeat. It was a force that had shaped the very foundation of Middle-earth's darkest history, and now it sought to return. The days that followed were marked by a grim sense of inevitability. Gandalf and his companions were forever changed by the knowledge they had uncovered. The weight of their discovery sank deep into their bones, and the fear of what lay ahead gnawed at them constantly. The world they had once known now felt fragile, as though the very ground beneath their feet could crumble at any moment. Moria's legacy, once thought to be a thing of the past, had become a haunting reminder of the evil that still lingered in the world. The darkness within the mines had never truly been destroyed. It had simply been waiting, biding its time. And now it was waking. As Gandalf and his companions made their way back from Moria, the thought of what lay ahead weighed heavily on them. The discovery they had made was not